everyone. Welcome back. It is your girl, Cosette.
Lexi.
And Rachel.
And this is so weird because obviously, let's address the elephant in the room. We're in a new location.
Woo woo.
And it's kind of fabulous.
It's kind of
It is
super
fabulous.
girly and very
I
us.
love this. This is a new vibe.
We're facing each other now, which is fun.
Yes, we are.
It's just all different.
I feel like I'm on a panel watching the Olympics, you know, when you watch the broadcasters and they're commenting. That's how I feel right now. I'm feeling...
Exactly. Is that the score? 10. Oh my God. But I mean, maybe we could start off by just, before we get into the podcast topic this week, just talking about like how much everything has changed since we first started.
Okay, I just being here in a new room and realizing the evolution of our podcast and our friendship throughout that it's just really cool and really poignant to be in a new space and just reflect on that. That's a good question because we really have transitioned a couple years from just an idea to talking every night about those ideas to then actually doing it, getting it from, you know, being at Cosette's house on a phone talking
around the
over
voice
wine.
memo.
Recording on the Oh my gosh, recording on the voice
On
memo.
the Venmo?
Sorry. Recording on the voice memo in your freaking kitchen.
Over
with,
wine.
Like, crickets going on in the background and
The
the
fridge-
AC, the fridge going
popping
on.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And now in this beautiful new space, huge
Yes.
thank you to Pacific Lens for having us in this space.
Thank you.
Do you want to
Pacific
talk
Lens
a little bit about
Studios.
Pacific
Shout out.
Lens?
Yes, you guys, if you are, trying to start a podcast, come on by. It's based in Orange County. So many different rooms, podcasting. They literally could help you with it.
It's really amazing.
Oh,
and
yeah.
The team has been great.
The rooms are so incredible, and I'm just a big fan.
I'm loving this.
But I mean, the reason why we initially started this podcast was to have important conversations about what we were feeling in certain seasons of our lives. And I think a lot of it centered around the fact that, like, I started going to therapy, and I feel like that was coming into a lot of our conversations, and you guys were kind of getting residual therapy from that. But at the same time, Lexi, you, I think, have such a special and empathetic way of talking through things, and I've always said I really think your calling in life is to be a therapist.
It is.
I do too.
We see it. We know.
I need to be a licensed therapist on this podcast. Then we can
You
really
should.
shake things up. I know. But I think really just the three of us and our dynamic allows us to each, because I think all three of us such giving and empathetic people, and we really we're such active listeners with each other and with our friends and family, and having that space where us three come together and it's just this aura of love and respect and kindness. That's how it feels, is us three in this circle of love and like just forgiveness and non-judgmental, like you know what I'm saying.
And it's great because it's like there's three of us, so we also play devil's advocate. You know, we're like feeling one way, but then we come when you guys pop in and it's like, hey, well, here's another perspective of that situation.
I
And
think
it's like,
Cosette
you
is
know what?
like the best at doing the
She
devil's
is.
advocate.
You are.
Yeah,
like,
to my demise.
Just
She's like,
let me just, what
Your
if?
feelings are very valid. But what about this?
Have you
I
thought
feel
about
like
this?
we all bring such a different perspective. We also all have such different upbringings. Like you, Orange County, I always say like Wisconsin, Minnesota. Like I don't know which one
Thank
to
you,
ever
because that
say.
is the most accurate.
Yeah, and me from New York, like we all grew up on such different areas of the country, and I feel like even just the way that we were raised, like you are the one girl out of brothers, you have a million siblings.
I do.
I'm one of three girls, and like we all were raised in such different ways, but we come together in such a beautiful way.
Yeah.
But I think when we do have something that we bring to the council and we're like, I need advice on this situation, everyone has such a different perspective. And like Rachel will say something that I'm like, oh, I had never thought about it that way. And then Alexi will say something that's like, oh, I hadn't thought about that either. And so it's just, again, like the importance of having a council, the importance of having friends that you can bring ideas to and hear both, like not just the consistent validation, but also the devil's advocate and the trying to understand and empathize with maybe the other person in the fight that you're bringing it to, which is why like I recently started going back to therapy after a little bit of a hiatus. But I feel like what I really get out of therapy is just having someone really explain the other person's perspective. Like, I don't go to therapy to get validated and be like, I'm in an argument with my boyfriend and blah, blah. I'm like, okay, no, I feel like I'm missing something here that maybe is like an underlying cause, and I want to understand how they are, like, what it is like to be in their shoes during this, and maybe what the real intention is here. Which leads me to our episode for today. Such a beautiful segue. I never plan these things. But understanding, after the storm, how do we recover from a big fight? And fights are never what they actually are about. Like, you're fighting over who's doing the dishes. You're fighting over why, one of you drives to the other person's house more often than the other. And it's never about what you think it is. And there's always something deeper, which is why I love therapy and also just breaking down things with your counsel. Like, it's so important to have those conversations and to really like psychoanalyze what's at the root cause of this. Like, okay, maybe if your partner's upset that they feel like you're not driving to them as much, maybe it's a need to feel like they're very important in your life, and maybe it's hitting on an insecurity or a trigger point of them. And a lot of these arguments start from trigger points. Would you guys agree with that?
Yes. I was like, wow, Cosette was on a roll with that. So it was like
mic drop.
I'm just letting her go.
I know. I was like, you just take it away. Take it with the therapy session right there. But what was the question?
I think like fighting could also be healthy in a relationship. You're able to, have this conflict, but understand, where that other person is coming from. And like through it, hopefully you grow. Fighting could not always be a bad thing.
No, we've talked about it, and I think if you're not fighting, then something's either not being addressed or
someone's not communicating.
Right, and or they're just not, I think, involved in the relationship as they should be.
Yeah.
Like you shouldn't strive away from conflict and resolving those like, I don't know, those bumps, those obstacles, because when you do, it gives you a chance to understand like how you both react, how you both think, how you both like what you like and don't like in a relationship or about yourselves. And like, so I think fighting is very important, but we all have experienced those really big fights that, as you said, Cosette, sometimes it feels like it's about the most mundane thing. It's a stupid fight over, oh, you didn't do the dishes. That's a very common one. And it turns into this explosive, we're both sleeping on the couches or separate bedrooms, and, we're not going to say sorry. And then you're like, how did this start over something so ridiculous as like,
so petty.
Okay, I'll do the dishes in an hour or whatever, whatever triggered it. And like you point out too, most of the time there's this underlying feeling that's not being addressed in one of the people. Usually, I know when I've lost it and exploded and have started a fight, because yes, hard to believe, I have started fights before.
What? Let's see.
What? And a lot of times it does start with, I think, for me and my partner living together, it's a lot of like house chores that I often, in my brain, before speaking up, I'm like tallying all the things, because I think women tally a lot. It's like, oh my gosh, I took the dogs out again. I did this, I did that. And that's something that my partner has pointed before. Why are you keeping track? Why are you doing this?
Yep.
And I need to watch that, because we can talk about also keeping track in a fight and keeping score. That's always not the healthiest thing. But, I let myself get to this point of like, I do all of this, kind of playing the martyr, playing the victim of like, I take it all on myself. And then I get to that point where it's too much and I just like unleash like, oh my gosh, you don't do anything. And that's unfair. That's unfair to start a fight like that. And really it's just, hey, I needed help that I was too proud to say, like, I would really appreciate help. I just expect them to do it. And I expect them to just kind of swoop in and be that person, when really it's okay to like, it's just a lack of communication on my part in those moments. And I let it get to a point where I unleash hell.
And you know what? Let me add on to that. So in regards to like, my relationship and everything, I feel like what has really helped me, it's like, okay, in regards to doing chores and, it's someone's responsibility. Let's say it's, your boyfriend's responsibility to do the dishes. What I like to do is I like to analyze both of our social batteries. So how are they feeling today? What did they do? Are they overwhelmed? And even if, it's his job to do the dishes, he's maybe at a 50% battery. I'm feeling great today, so I'm going to step up and do it, you know?
That's a really great suggestion. Look at the social battery. And I think we've talked about that before. It's never going to be 50-50 in a relationship. And sometimes when someone's at a 10, you need to just pick it up and be that 90.
Yeah.
And that's a great reminder and way to look at that. Like, look at that person. What has their week or their month or their work life, their personal life, or what are they trying to tackle next? Sorry.
Literally,
that's a great reminder and something I'll try to practice when I go into beast mode.
I have a lot to say here.
Yeah.
And don't mind me, I'm having this is just falling a little bit, so don't mind. I'm just like holding it like I'm a singer right now. But
You are a singer.
A little arm workout there.
I just want to make a little arm workout. I just want to make sure that everyone can pick me up. But okay, I have two things here that were just very relevant to what you were all saying. First one was okay, I'm gonna go with the second one first. I'm gonna go with the second one first because I didn't remember the first one. The second one I was gonna say was, what was the first one? It'll come back to me.
It'll come back.
But essentially, like when someone brings a point to you, like let's use doing the dishes as an example because I think it's a very universal example. You are really upset because you asked your partner to do the dishes and they didn't do the dishes, and you come to them. I watch all these like role play examples of like a therapist acting out how different scenarios could work. And you come to them and you're like, hey, you didn't do the dishes. And really, I just asked you to do one thing. And what blah, blah, this is making me feel blah, blah, which not everyone explains like what it makes them feel. So that it's always a good thing to like talk more about like I statements and how it makes you feel. But a lot of times when someone is bringing an issue to their partner, the partner feels the need to then throw something back and be like, well, you didn't make the bed when you said you would. And then we get into this really vicious cycle of going back and forth. And so they say
Kinda
whenever
like the scorekeeping.
Yeah, exactly. That was the first thing I was going to say.
okay.
Was don't keep
We'll go
score. Don't
We'll
keep
go back
score.
to that one.
That when we start keeping score, it becomes just a really like vicious cycle of going back and forth and being like, well, you did this and you did that. And like that's something that I think all relationships or partnerships come to the point where they're like, okay, well, I'm going to do this so that I can like have leverage like over or like use it as ammo so that next time they get upset at me, I can be like, well, remember the time I did that. And that's not ever the reason why you should do something. You should do something because you want to.
Yeah.
But yeah, like when someone comes to you with a grievance or with something that upsets them, that is the worst time for you to then bring an issue up. Like there are a million
Absolutely.
other minutes in the day that you can bring something up. And when your partner brings something to you, you just should be, your job should just be to understand them and to listen to them and validate them.
Receive it.
Exactly. Like this goes the same way. Like if my partner comes to me and is like, well, I'm really upset because I feel like you never want to spend time with me, then I'm not saying I'm an angel. Like the worst thing I can do in that situation is, well, you actually never do this and blah, blah, blah. Then that just creates this big argument that comes out of nowhere, and then we really lose what the point of the argument was to begin with. And yeah, we're like not wanting to spend time with each other. The best thing to do in that scenario is, okay, I understand. Maybe like you can try to respectfully explain why you do it that way. Like, you know, I know I haven't been coming as much to your house. It's because I've been really overwhelmed with XYZ, but I understand that. And it's literally sometimes I will get so upset over the smallest things. And all that I need to hear is, hey, like, I understand that was upsetting. Like, I get that. I'm sorry. And then I'm happy. Like a friend of mine, she was supposed to come to a game night and she ended up, she thought it was the following week. And so she just didn't show up and we didn't hear from her. And then I finally hear from her, like, I think an hour into the game night, like, and oh my gosh, I get to talk about a concept that I really love. And it's the concept of overreacting versus underreacting. So she overreacted and texted me this long paragraph being like, I know how scheduled you are. I know how much this matters to you. I'm so sorry. Like, I'm so stupid. Like, when overreacted. So then when it came to me, I was like, oh, like, yeah, don't worry about it. That's totally fine. So as humans, we have this like need to meet equilibrium. And if someone is overreacting to a specific situation, then we will meet them by underreacting and vice versa. So this is something that you can use in your relationships when you're at fault for something. Even if you feel like maybe an overreaction is not justified, it makes the other person feel so much better. And it also helps, I guess, like regulate what their response might be. Say you're a barista in a coffee shop and you mess up someone's drink. And when they're like, hey, you made me the wrong drink, you overreact and you're like, I'm so sorry. What can I get you? Like, oh my God, if you want to keep that one, you can keep it. Like, that was my mistake. Then they're a lot less likely to freak out and be like, they're probably going to be like, okay, yeah, no, don't worry about it. Like, this is what I ordered. Meanwhile, if you underreact, they're going to feel like the reaction was not what the issue deserved in their circumstance or in their perspective. So you make the wrong coffee and you're like, and the person comes and says, this is the wrong coffee. And you're like, okay, well, it doesn't matter. Like, what do you want? Then they're going to overreact because they feel like they were not validated and they feel like you didn't give them the right response. So this is something that you can practice a lot in your relationships and just understanding like, overreaction versus underreaction. When I have someone overreact to being late to something, to having to cancel on me, I'm so much more likely to be like, hey, that's fine. Like, hey, thank you for acknowledging that. Thank you for realizing that that's something that's difficult for me, is like plans changing last minute. And I'm totally fine. I feel fine because I know that you apologize and I know you feel bad.
I totally feel, literally snaps to what you're saying. I had an ex that was, very intense and very extreme and had a lot of emotions. So when there was an issue and I was met with this huge thing that wasn't really a huge thing, but was portrayed as a huge thing, I would have to come in and like, since he was up here, I'd have to be all the way down here and be like, oh, okay, let me hear you out, like talk it out. And just like instead of matching, because if I did match it, it'd just be a cat fight going back and forth. But since I approached it and I was, my demeanor was calm, I was relaxed, I wasn't matching him, it scales the other person down.
Because they realize like, oh, am I bringing a lot of energy right now when this person's really calm? That's also why I love like being calm and collected in an argument, especially when you're with a partner who tends to be a little bit more passionate with their approach.
Yeah.
And so you can kind of like meet that equilibrium by being a little bit more on the calm side.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I love these strategies.
I feel like Lexi's ready to
I was
talk.
like, well, let's talk about how these sometimes inevitable big fights happen and how we can recover and get back.
Exactly.
Like if we don't practice these moments, because we're all human, we all don't utilize the tools and the skills that we have to communicate properly every single time. So like what, is important is that these big fights can happen. These little setbacks can happen. It's important that, the aftermath, you don't lose touch and you don't let that become a gulf and you don't let that kind of provide more separation and distance into like how you're feeling. So I think like all three of us, we've experienced the greats of a relationship, the pitfalls of a relationship.
Good, bad, and ugly.
We've gone through, I think the more that we learn to communicate and the more therapy we do, it's all part of our growth. And so that's why I think like everyone has been through, we've been the bad guy and we've been the receiver of the bad person making that fight. So I think we have a lot of wisdom to offer in this conversation. So I want to open it up to you both, what things haven't worked or have worked in the past after you had like a really big fight that neither of you feel good about.
Yeah.
How do you like approach either that next morning or the next day? What does that look like for you?
So for me personally, I'm like, ooh.
Yeah.
For me personally, like when I get into arguments, some may be my fault, some may not be my fault. If it is not my fault and something gets me really upset, I need time. I need a break. I need to step away from the situation because in that moment I'll be feeling so riled up and I'll be like, I am, gonna lash out or say things that I don't really mean. So honestly, I like to give myself like 24 hours. I'll tell my partner, okay, I'm aware of everything going on in this situation. I need a second to cool down and recollect my thoughts. And then I would love to sit down when me and you are both calm and talk this out. So time really is huge for me.
What I loved about that is that you also, you allowed yourself space to come back and you communicated that to your partner. Like the next day, you guys both have a long night, whether that's like in person, over text, over phone call. You're both like not understanding each other and understanding like, okay, I need time. I will come back to this situation. Let's give each other a break and some breathers and let's revisit this tomorrow morning or like, the next day, depending if you live together or don't live together. So, I mean,
that really helps me.
Yeah.
Everyone's different, but that's what works for me.
I know. It's the opposite for me. I'm like, give me time.
You're like, your time is 1 minute.
Yeah, I'm like, now?
You got 60
now?
seconds. Yeah.
I'm working on that.
Yeah, I'm the same way with like stepping away and needing to process my own thoughts. Especially like I've gotten into arguments when I lived with a partner and that's kind of difficult because you can't get your own space. But something that we would do is we would both go in walks in different directions around the neighborhood for 20 minutes. And they say 20 minutes is enough time psychologically to like reset and be able to calm down your nervous system. So we would go for like a 20-minute walk separately and then come back to the conversation. And that like not everyone is going to need the time, but it was important for me. And he was kind of more like Lexi where he like didn't want time, but it's important to be able to like collect your thoughts. And in these moments, some questions that you can ask are, what am I feeling? What did I need that I didn't express clearly? And where could I have paused instead of pushed? I think those are really good examples of just
that
like,
last one.
Yeah, reflecting like how maybe you handled the situation. And something that is kind of our mantra on this podcast, I think, is a quote from Rachel, and it's not me and
glad
you.
you brought it up.
It's not me versus you, it's us versus the issue.
I gotta give credit to The Bachelor. He's the one that told me that.
So
excellent.
excellent.
Credit
to The Bachelor. But that's something that is important for both partners to understand. Like, Mr. Tennis and I got into a little bit of a
little spicy,
silly little debacle yesterday.
Bicker and banter.
Yeah, and it was basically like, this episode's going pretty live after we film it, so it's gonna be pretty funny for him to listen to this. But I was getting my oil changed, and he was in the car with me, and I was like, yeah, because I have an Audi, so I need like premium oil. And he was like, you're being ripped off, you're being scammed, you don't need premium oil. And I said,
for a moment, I thought you were talking about belly buttons. I thought you meant Audi
oh
belly
my
button.
gosh.
And then I was thinking of Severance, and I was like, I don't know.
Funny.
And then it hit. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, no, Audi AUDI. But we got into this whole issue where I felt like my I wasn't being trusted. I felt like he didn't think that I knew what was best for me. And this is something that I've done myself. Like, I've changed my oil a million times. So I was kind of just like, bro, like, let me do my thing. I didn't bring you to get my oil changed so that you could have your own thoughts. And I felt like it was just like I wasn't being trusted. I felt like he thought, it felt to me like he was saying,
your judgment was being questioned.
Yeah,
You're like,
exactly.
I've owned a car.
Exactly.
For how
Like,
many
I don't
years?
know any better. Yeah.
Right.
So
I'm not a child.
Yeah,
Like,
that's how it felt to me. But he just tends to be very passionate with the way that he talks about things. And so it felt very targeted. I also just had horrible stomach pains yesterday.
Yeah.
So I was just not having a good day. And he was like he was like, okay, let's take a beat, because I got upset. I was like giving him the little like looking out the window without looking at him.
Well, I'm glad he saw your cues.
I love a window lookout.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
And
very
then the
obvious,
elbows turned slightly away, but he was like, hey, listen, like, I'm not trying, and I expressed like, it feels like you don't trust my judgment. I'm not like stupid. I'm not going to get scammed. And he was like, listen, I'm just trying to help you get the best deal for your car. Like, I want it to make sense for you. And he said, remember, like, it's not me versus you, it's us versus the issue. And I'm not saying that resolved the entire thing, but it definitely helped me realize, like, okay, his intentions are good. I know his intentions are good. But yeah, it just like, in those moments, it's good to take a second and be like, okay, I feel like I'm being attacked because I just tend to be a very defensive person, but his intention is not to attack me. And most of the time in a healthy relationship, their intention is never to attack you.
Which I think is just an important reminder, as we're like just talking about this whole general topic, is if those fights happen where you both are just kind of like being stubborn in the moment, or you're giving too much push or too much pull or whatever in that scenario, reflecting on it, whether that's the next day or, the next, how many hours after that big fight happens, is just like, what do you think their intention was?
Yeah.
How do you feel about the relationship in general as a person? Because sometimes fights, like we've talked about this also, if fights keep popping up or you find yourself more annoyed with them, which is causing a fight, then maybe it's the person in the relationship that you're not happy with, and not necessarily what they're doing that's causing like this big fight. So I think the reflection and understanding their intention, like, if they're out to hurt you and not hurt you. We've been through those relationships where we know the difference between them causing an issue to hurt you and them causing an issue because out of something else happening within them, or like, trying to help you. So I think just remembering their intention and reflecting on how that made you feel in that moment, what is that root cause, and being able to get back to that. And sometimes you have to be the bigger person and speak first, because sometimes we both, I think all of us have waited for that other person to reach out or to say something. And I've been in that scenario, and it's taken a full day of us just walking around on eggshells, not talking to each other, kind of like doing that whole
dancing around to the topic.
And that's not fun. And sometimes that even causes a bigger issue because you just fume. Then you're like, they're not gonna say something. Well, fine. Like, and sometimes you just have to be that person, that bigger person, and be like, hey, can we address yesterday? Hey, do you need anything that helps you, like, or prepares you to have this conversation? Like, sometimes you have to swallow that and speak it, because that's gonna help resolve that, like, that aftermath so much more quickly than you waiting sometimes for the other person to do that.
I think what would be good is, let's say you're having a heated argument and like the conversation's over, but it's not done. Following up and just being like, hey, I don't feel like this conversation, has been settled. It doesn't feel complete to me. I know right now we're not getting anywhere. So, is later this evening or even tomorrow a good time to circle back so that we could try to figure this out?
Yep, I agree 100%. I also think don't be afraid to ask what you need from them, and of course ask what they need in return. This episode has gone by so fast, but I think there's so much more we can explore, and maybe we will in a future episode.
Of course, fights are always happening.
Yeah, we will put a pin in it for this week and leave you on the edge of your seats.
Yes.
But yeah, so just hopefully these are little lessons, tips, and tricks to help you resolve conflict in a little bit more of a healthy way.
And don't feel abnormal for having them.
Yeah,
absolutely. We're all flawed humans and we all make mistakes.
Encourage conflict, Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Nope. Engage conflict in a healthier way. Like, that's all what we're doing here.
Absolutely. So that's it. We're signing off. This is Cosette,
Lexi,
and Rachel.
Bye.